everyone. Welcome to another podcast, Talk2Rami. Today is amazing because I'm sitting here with a great friend, entrepreneur, tech guy, coach, educator, and then most importantly, the author of The Human Fabric, Bijoy. Bijoy is in the house. Goswami, the man, Bijoy. Thank you for here, man.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. We talked so much, during the lunch, but it's fascinating. It's really fascinating when you read this book. I started reading it. I like the MRE, but we're going to get into it. Yeah. But for you listeners or people that are watching, there is a gift at the end of this podcast that if you listen or watch, you will get that. Bijoy will explain that later. But tell me about the book.
It might be at the end. It might be in the middle.
In the middle.
Listen to the whole thing to find out.
Tell me who is Bijoy. Let's see. Let's figure it out. Who is Bijoy?
Who is Bijoy? Well, in India they say that your name is your life's meditation. So I think in Persian culture too, like the names are given very carefully.
Yes, very careful.
Very carefully, because if you think about how many times you utter your name and how many times you hear your name, you are basically, that's your mantra. That's the word you are meditating on all your life. And what's interesting to me is that by the journey I've been on, I was given two names by my grandmother because they didn't know the gender of the child. And my grandmother went to the festival of Durga, who is an Indian goddess. Her victory is her puja, her Durga puja. Her victory is called her Bijoya. And so my grandmother says to my mom and dad, if the child is a boy, call it Bijoy. If it's a girl, Bijoya. So you know how the gender conversation is now happening in the world, right? People are in the conversation dialogue of their personal gender identity and things like that. Back in 1972, I already had the male and the female. And I think then when I went to Taiwan, I was given the name Bija, which means philosopher.
Wow.
By my Chinese teacher. And of course, when I introduce myself to English-speaking people, I say be joy, like be happy, be joy.
Be joy,
right? Yeah. So, I think to me, it's been a really amazing journey because I think my question in my life is, how do I be joy? How do I live life according to my rules, my own understanding, my own models? And it's taken me a lifetime to work that out. But I was given the gifts of all these differences of culture, religion, country, language to help me do that. And I think what I did for myself to go on this journey, I think I do for others, is to figure out who you are and what your journey is. I don't know. I don't know what Rami's supposed to do with his life. I don't have any guidance for you, except that you have to figure out how to do Rami. And I think that kind of is the big difference. You have a lot of folks in the world that are going to tell you their way, that you should follow them because they have the answer to your health or the answer to your relationships or whatever it is. I'm not one of those people. But I think there's a way to go on that journey of self-discovery, and that's where I've spent my time. So I think for me, it's all those things. Like philosophy what is philosophy? Philosophy is a way to create models that we can organize our lives by, right? And so my Mandarin teacher was correct. I'm kind of a philosopher, but I'm not a philosopher that's going to tell you, here's the philosophy. It's more like, I don't know, here's a way to get to your philosophy.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a subtle difference in that. So to me, this journey is really amazing and interesting because we're all works in progress. We're always on this journey of learning. I just love learning ever since I was a little kid, and learning from the world. So being able to grow up in 3 countries with multiple religions, we all have access to all the things that humans have ever come up with. Us sitting here have access to everything that humans came up with to this point. And it's a tragedy if we don't explore all those things to find out what works for us, So I didn't choose that. I didn't choose to live in 3 countries. My parents took us on a journey from India to Taiwan to Hong Kong. But as a result of that journey, I realized I could dip into all this richness of Indian culture, Chinese culture, American culture. I went to American schools, right? And that journey has continued when I came to the States, when I went to school. I did 3 different majors in school: history, economics, and computer science at Stanford. And that was super fascinating because it allowed me to see the world from very different perspectives, like a scientific, like mathematical perspective versus a historical perspective versus an economic perspective. These are all just different ways to understand. And I think that's been the great joy, is that if you can realize that you are in charge of all the models and constructs of your life, and that there's all these things that are out there, it's a daunting journey. It can be a daunting journey, but it's a really fun journey, because what you find at the end of that is yourself.
Basically what you're telling me, which is by reading your book, which is, I read it, I'm almost done, I'm getting the online course, I really, really like it. And it's so fascinating that when you get to know yourself, most of the problem will be solved, as what I understood by reading the book, because I think the self-discovery, self-awareness that you talk about, that you just said it about the journey, getting to know yourself, that's the most important thing is. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that most of the people, they have that problem.
Yeah. We're all programmed by our parents, who are well-meaning often. We're programmed by our society. We're programmed by history. We're programmed by all things about what we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to do. But those things aren't for us. They're just the general output of thousands of years of some particular story or history or whatever it is. And in all of that, we're not taught to really look at ourselves, to really investigate who we are. We're taught about the customer. Customer is always important. If you're in America, the customer is king, right? And so, well, that customer's needs are important, but not my needs, right? So there's a journey of getting to know yourself, and there's a lot of different ways that you can start. So, for example, Human Fabric is in that group of personality models, right? So there's things about us that are predictable and part of a pattern. That's okay. That doesn't make us less unique. But if we can start to understand that we are kind of in one of these different groups or categories, or I call them energies, then you can begin to understand yourself and go, wow, that's my unique perspective. Then you can start to develop and deepen that and become even better at it and find your unique expression of it. But if you're trying to be all things to all people, right, then you're going to have a lot of wasted energy in your life where you are not finding the right partner who's the one that has that core skill or capacity, who can help you get your journey moving forward, right? So this idea of being good at everything is a really, I think, very debilitating idea for people. Because it says, oh, I've got to be the best at all things. No, you got to be the best at the things you are really good at. So, in this realm of understanding yourself, there's wonderful models out there. You've got Myers-Briggs,
yeah,
right? You've got the Enneagram. You've got DISC. You've got all kinds of So there are all kinds of different models around personality, and they all are interesting. You've got the 5 personality models from psychology, which is slightly different than those, and they all have different things they're trying to do, right? And they have different ways of organizing how to understand ourselves. The way I think about it is, and I think they all will be useful. You can always, astrology, right? Pick a card or think about, I'm an Aries, right? That's a way of organizing people into categories, right? In the zodiac, in the Western zodiac, you have 12, right? 12 categories?
12 categories.
Right. Now, connecting that to your birthday is a little bit problematic. Right?
I had that problem.
But that's because back in the day, they were trying to connect, personality with the cosmos, right? With understanding the universe. Okay, that's a little silly. But the idea of someone goes, yeah, I'm an Aries because, and they go, because of these 3 things. What's happening? They're actually seeing aspects of that very generic description, and they're picking out the things that actually are them. So that's why things like a zodiac or an astrology chart can be very interesting, because it's your reaction to the words on the page that are giving you the insight into who you really are. Because you're not just taking everything in that. You're identifying with certain things.
It's your interpretation.
Your interpretation, right? So that's a useful thing. So in these kinds of models, personality models, you have very descriptive models. If you think about Myers-Briggs, 16 categories. Did you know you're a Myers-Briggs type?
I think, yeah, I took it, but
Okay.
but I don't really remember. I know I'm the connector.
But not in, right? Okay.
Yeah, you're right. It's totally different thing.
Right. No. But here's the thing. That's the problem with Myers-Briggs. You do the thing, and then sometime later you're like, what am I? It's too complicated for that. Right? When you're doing it at that moment, you get that description. Okay, I'm one of 16 categories. I'm ENTP, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Great. 1 month later, 2 months later, 6 months later, what's my type? Because that model is so complex. It's very descriptive, but it's not very memorable for a human being to carry around with easily.
I took Jordan Peterson. That was confusing.
Yeah, well, exactly, because those models aren't trying to give you something simple that you can run with. That's not what that person making that model is doing, right? On the other hand, if you have models that are too simple, right, then you don't have enough richness in the model, and then you're kind of stuck with categories that don't really make sense. Like, men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, like, there's a gender issue that's stereotyping there, but number two, it's only 2 categories, so that's not enough to give you anything interesting to really play with, right? But the human mind likes 2. We like dualities. We like 2 things, Republicans and Democrats, whatever it is, right? So because we like those simplistic things, we often gravitate to simplistic models that aren't necessarily going to be useful to us or descriptive enough. So in that continuum of descriptiveness and communicability, right, the MRE model kind of occupies what I think is kind of a happy spot. You've got 3 categories of energies.
And energies, yeah.
Right? And they're easy to remember: the maven, the relator, the evangelist, right? Steve talks about this in his book as well. Yeah. We were writing our books at the same time back in the day, and he references those types. Steve Harper. With those 3 energies, once you realize that they're sitting on a triangle, now you actually get some interesting things, because you can be anywhere around that triangle. So you can have a major energy and a minor energy, and those 2 things are actually dialoguing with each other. So now you have actually more than 3 categories. But the 3 essential categories are maven, relator, evangelist, right? So for me, like, I try to take things that are complex, and I don't want to just make it complex and show you how it's so complicated. It's got 17,000 things. It's more about, can I take that as a tool in my tool set, and it's going to be a living thing that I can use every day and be useful to me, right? And so I'm trying to find that sweet spot with MRE and with all the other models that I build, of reducing it down to the very essential categories or that you need, but not over reducing it, oversimplifying it, because then it's not
digestible.
Yeah.
It's very digestible.
It's built for, I call it software for humans,
Because when I read it, it was like, I know I'm a relator, or and the different energy, and
right.
I got that, and I got a little bit from the other one too, but the core was that, and it was kind of easy to navigate through that.
Well, and it's really interesting, right? Because like that, one of the things for me, whenever I built any of these things, I'm solving this problem of how do I Bijoy, right? As a verb, how do I Bijoy? How do I go on my journey? And for me, this MRE was when I started to kind of put this model together, which came out of a software company that I started with my friend Bruce back in the day. It just, all of a sudden, like, I started to understand myself, most importantly, and understand it was very funny, because my buddy Bruce, who I started that software company with, he's a tall, blonde guy,
Yeah.
And I'm the short Indian guy. And very quickly, we talked to a customer, and they'd realize, wait, Bijoy's the sales guy? He's the engineer? Because, the Indian guy's supposed to be the engineer, right? I'm like, yeah, sorry, I'm not, you don't want my code in this software, So the minute I understood, like, oh, I have this energy, and if I hone that energy, then I can go do my thing, do Bijoy's thing, but I've got someone like Bruce or whoever, all these wonderful collaborators that I've had over the years. If I bring their energy into my project, or I join their project and help them with my energy, then this combination becomes so much more powerful, right? Between 2 people who have complementary energies. So there's a kind of math that starts to emerge out of this model. It was really funny when I wrote the book with my buddy Dave Walpert. Another friend of mine, Tina Schweiger, she decided to make 3 paintings. She did the book cover, book design of the cover.
I know Tina, yeah.
Tina, the icons and everything.
Yeah.
And officiated her wedding as well years ago. So I asked Tina to do the book cover, and it was really cool because on the book cover, if you see that, that's the evangelist. Okay, the three energies. She designed three icons for each of the three energies. If you see the evangelist, he's the only the evangelist energy is the only character that's you can see the motion.
Yeah,
he's the only one with two legs. Now, if you take in Chinese the word for person, like you got your Persian script here.
Yeah.
Okay, the character for person is Ren. Is two that stroke.
Oh, okay.
And it's on top of human, the human fabric, right? She didn't even realize she was, and the book cover is red, which is in China, red is it was a lucky color. So she didn't realize she was giving me this beautiful design. She had put the evangelist icon on top of the human fabric, and it perfectly sit there because that's the one that has the Ren character in it, right? Whereas the Maven and the Relator they only have one.
They only have
the one stem, right? Now Tina also made 3 paintings. So when we had the book release party and book people, we also unveiled 3 paintings that showed the different energies, so people could actually like see the world of that energy.
Wow, so fascinating.
And so so that was another way for people to begin to see that this pattern is here. When she used her understanding of color theory, and she's a painter and a graphic designer, she used all of that to give us a peek into the world of each of the energies. And I mean, we could probably put those on for folks to look at, but it's really cool because you have this one side of your brain, we have this kind of the left and right? That's kind of one paradigm. But when you start to aesthetically get it through the feel, then when you go to logically get it through the words and the text, you now get this kind of beautiful, deep understanding of something, right? And the cool thing is, you can now start to see this pattern in all kinds of things around you. Right. Once you get these 3 energies, you can start to see this pattern in kind of human structures and storytelling, in all these things. You see that this pattern keeps repeating itself over and over and over again with what we do as human beings. Our organizations have a core energy, and they sit on one of the 3 parts of that stool. Right. So we're surrounded by things like that. But once you have kind of an elegant model like that, the explanatory power of that becomes really, really useful.
But when you know the MRE, when you apply that, and you get to know yourself, you know the energy, how you can connect yourself with others. For example, like sometimes I reject some people because I don't know, there's the energy or we're not in the same page, or negative people, how you kind of manage that, because it's two-sided energy, I think.
Yeah, that's right. So what was interesting about this, and it's not in the book, but it's in the course, was that, and I remember why I was also telling you the story about the paintings. The way that I would draw the triangle out was the Maven at the top, the Relator on the left, and the Evangelist on the right. What Tina did with the paintings is she took those paintings and she tilted the triangle just slightly. And what you see is that the Evangelist is actually pulling the triangle forward. The triangle is moving, okay? The Maven, who's the intellectual thought, is on the top. And the Relator is behind. That tells you kind of where those energies tend to sit. When you see a company, right? When you think of Apple, who do we think of? Steve Jobs. But Steve Wozniak was there. Steve Wozniak actually built the first computer by himself. He designed the whole computer. Steve Jobs was not involved.
Why Steve Jobs was the main character?
Because we love evangelists. Evangelists, right? If you think about U2, who do we think of? Bono, right?
Yeah.
The front man or the front person, front woman of a band. That's usually that evangelist, because evangelists have that connection to action. They want to move the world forward. They want to give you a message. They want to tell you what's next. Right? So that evangelist takes up, and they have this relationship with people that kind of deals with people as a group, right? Whereas a Relator is not about the group. A Relator is about this one-on-one, like conversation that we're having right now. It's not like I'm going to sit here in front of a large audience and communicate. I'm going to communicate, really get to know you, right? But the Maven is not about that at all. The Maven's about ideas and concepts, right? So when you start thinking about this triangle, then what's interesting is in different contexts, you're going to need different energies. Right. So what we're tending to do, this is not because we're looking around going, I need a maven or a relator. But what we're trying to do with life relationships, partnerships, like coming together, creating a family, we're trying to complete that triangle. So you're literally looking for your opposite on that. But when you're doing a business, you need someone that's more like on the major and minors are swapped.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So because in that case, your major is my minor and my minor is your major. We can work together on that.
It will complement, yeah.
We'll complement because we both understand each other's energy, but we also have skills that are very different, right? So in a founding team, usually you'll find that adjacency of energies where they're kind of got a little bit of each other's energy, but there's clearly a lead energy in the founding team.
Basically, if I'm the connector, I'm the relator, I have to find somebody that is, the
other two. But also, you look at your minor, because it's when you get your minor that you know that other one can be that swap, right? So if your relator major and let's say, do you have a sense for your minor yet?
Not yet.
Okay. So when we get to that part of the conversation, but once that kind of becomes clear, now again, we have to remember these are just models, right? So they are models that are useful, but that doesn't mean you should run your life rigidly based on that. But what you'll find is, for example, when people are find the partners in life that they want to live together, make a family, they find that they're dealing with the opposite energy.
But the energy is something that, for me personally, I always attract some certain people. Mm-hmm. I don't know, and everybody telling me you have that energy that. The people come toward me or we talk. I don't know what it is. And sometimes I can even feel it that when I look at somebody that I don't even know, but we start looking at each other and say, hi. And then we start in the business environment or personal. What is that energy? I don't know what is it. It comes from me. It comes from what I put out there or what is already out there. I don't know what it is.
Yes to all, right? If Rami is being Rami in the world and you're being centered around yourself, then you're putting out a very, very clear signal about who it is and what you are. All right.
And then you attract.
And then that's giving that signal out to other people that, oh, this person is somebody I need to connect with, right? So they in turn are going to go, wow, I'm sensing that this person is someone I need to figure out what this relationship is. Part of your genius is that your genius, Steve, as well, right? That you are relators in that sense, that you bring this energy of people together. So people feel very comfortable to approach you. You have openness to the way you show up in the world, right? And because of that openness, people feel very accepted. They don't feel judged. They feel like they can approach. And so people are always coming to talk to you because they know they have a person they can confide in, share something with, and that itself is that power of that relator energy.
Yeah, I'm going to just shift the subject a little bit to what we both are very passionate entrepreneurship, that, this MRE and everything else, self-awareness are so important, especially right now in being an entrepreneur or entrepreneurship. And what is I know we talk about this, but how you define now, the entrepreneurship now, how you define it, how it changed from many years ago that you and I, we were in it, when the Austin
Bootstrap Austin.
Yeah. What changed? What is the meaning now? Mine is totally different. Sometimes it's embarrassing, but.
What do you mean?
Because it's changed. Because it's not a community anymore.
Right.
It's about I give, you take.
Yeah.
What can you do for me? What is going to cost me? Rather than how can I serve you? How can I help you? How we can bring the ideas to life? How we can help each other as a community?
Yeah.
And educate one another, because I don't know a lot of stuff that Bijoy knows. Bijoy doesn't know that I know. How can we come together, create something more valuable rather than just I pay the membership, I want to be over there, and I got this pitch, give me the money, I need the money, I need investor, I need a VC, it's so confusing right now. Sometimes it's just, what is your take on that?
Well, I think the main problem that we have is that we have entrepreneur porn.
I love that.
Which is a term. I was doing an interview.
Remember, guys, entrepreneur porn.
That's the takeaway from today's talk.
Yeah.
Don't think entrepreneur porn is the real thing. It's just it's like the regular porn. It's not the real thing. It's a fake thing. And entrepreneurship has become something that's being sold as entertainment and as a kind of Shark Tank and all this ridiculousness that people do. And there's also a conflation. So number one, we've got this pornification of entrepreneurship, and everybody wants to get big fast and be $1 billion, and it's a completely vacuous journey. Like, so great, you have $1 billion. Now what? All you're going to do is be amplified. All of your personality flaws are going to be amplified by $1 billion, right? And we see that a lot in the world today, right? But I think at the very back to models. I think the problem, if we get away from this horrible pornification. Part of it is that in entrepreneurship, there's actually 3 different kinds of activity that we're talking about. Now, you can, again, divide it into as many categories. But when we talk about small business, for example, like, a restaurant, a laundromat, those are entrepreneurial, but they're not entrepreneurship. And it's very important to distinguish that. So most small businesses are copying a business model that already exists somewhere. Some entrepreneur figured out a working business model, and now you're going to make a copy of that. Right, so you're taking that model. So you can go to a bank and say, hey, I'm going to start my coffee shop. And they'll say, great, here's the loan paper, fill out this information, and we'll give you a loan. Why is that? Because there's nothing complicated about a coffee shop at this point. Maybe back in the day, but now we kind of know if you're doing a basic coffee shop. So entrepreneurship is the discovery of new business models. And within that, you have 2 parallel or complementary approaches to that. You have this funding approach or capital-based approach, and you have this bootstrap approach. And those 2 things are kind of working very differently. And what you have to do to play one game is very different than what you have to do the other game. But if we don't have enough sophistication around our model for entrepreneurship, then we just throw everything. We say, oh, you got to do a 5-minute elevator pitch. No, you don't. Not if you're bootstrapping. You don't care about a 5-minute elevator. Who's the elevator pitch for? A venture capitalist. Okay. So you have to give them a fictional account of your business model
But the VC is a easy way out that a lot of entrepreneurs say, I want to go grab the money. I want to go get the money rather than bootstrapping.
Yes, and that's because of the pornification. I refer you back to the porn, right? Who's marketing entrepreneurship? It's VCs. When you go watch Shark Tank, who's the big guy on Shark Tank? It's all those investors. Right? So they've made themselves the top of the heap, and now everybody's like, oh, the investor is No, the customer is the important person in this game. But if your model of entrepreneurship is that, and you've been taught by media, by whatever, that in order to build a business, you need capital, then that's what you're going to go do. But you don't realize you're entering into a game in which that person has a customer. The venture capitalist has a customer, which is the person they got the money from to fund their fund. And they've got to return that money in 10 or 12 years for the life of the fund times a certain percentage. So they're on a timeline. Well, guess what? The minute you get joined into that operation, you're on a timeline, right? Because we got to figure out if this is one of the horses we got to shoot because it's not going to go anywhere, or we got to replace the jockey because he's not scaling fast enough, right? So that game is not about your journey. It's not about your passion. It's not about any of those things. It's about let's go find something that we can claim is a new business model. Maybe even if we might not even get the whole business model. If we can convince somebody else that we have enough here that they'll buy into our company, buy the asset, the company itself, we've succeeded. So you saw that in the .com, boom and bust, right? You saw that because you had companies that were going public that had no business model, right? So that game is not about it's. A business model is kind of incidental to that game, right? It's interesting because we were talking about Google earlier. Google didn't try to figure out their business model. In other words, how were they going to make money until the stock market started crashing and VC funds were drying out and they couldn't go public and they weren't going to be acquired. Google wanted to be acquired by Yahoo back in the 90s.
Yep.
That was their big success factor. But once that wasn't going to happen, they said, oh, because you had a free Google search engine and you didn't have to pay anything. You just had millions of people using the search engine, right? But it was only in the late 90s that they finally said, we really have to figure out a business model here. And that's when they invented the AdWords. And then since then, they've never looked back, right? So you've got this problem of 2 different paths. This funding path has kind of taken over like a cancer. Again, I'm not anti-funding, and this is one thing people don't misunderstand about the way I talk about it. It's not that funding is bad and Bootstrap is good or vice versa. Each one is its own set of rules. It has certain outcomes from which success is measured, and you've got to understand what game you're playing. Right? You have to understand the reality for a venture capitalist and what they have to produce a very large return. So you might build a really great business that grows at 5 or 10% every year. It's just not going to cut it for a venture capitalist because they're looking for something that's going to give 100, 200x return, right? So why go into that game? Why play that game if you're enjoying this really nice journey and you're getting customers and you're growing and you have a great ride, right? But if you're going to not understand what your journey is about, then you're going to fall into the trap and play a game that maybe is not really the game you want to play.
Most of the startups I know, they're usually, going after the VCs.
Yeah.
Like, I think that the pain of bootstrapping, and it, or, the model or how the model is going to work. One of the reasons I think they're not educated.
Yes.
That's what you remember in the old days. You were talking and teaching about the differences between bootstrapping and the VC and everything. It's got the art into it.
Yeah.
And as you said, is a journey. Is finding yourself while you're doing it, and taking care of the customer, create that value and everything else, rather than say I got a business idea, I need $1 million. And go over there. It's totally changed.
Well, and the thing is that, and I think I've failed in this because we did Bootstrap Austin for about 10 years, and we really gave bootstrapping a place. When I was at Stanford, at that time in the 90s, right, it was all about funding. But yet, if you look at the history of Silicon Valley and some of the greatest companies, like Microsoft, not Silicon Valley, but HP, the founding company of Silicon Valley, 1939, Oracle, multi-billion-dollar company, so many companies were bootstrapped. Certainly in the early days, they were bootstrapped. Apple was bootstrapped for a number of years before they got, their first rounds of funding, right? And even whatever funding they got was very small. It was tiny little kind of helpful capital, right? But that was after they'd already sold 50 and were making 50 for the bike shop, and they'd actually delivered computers and things like that on their own. Steve Jobs had sold his VW bus, and Wozniak had sold his calculator, HP calculator. That was the starting capital, $1,500 for.
Well, sometimes money doesn't solve the problem. I have seen it actually last month. The company, I don't want to name it, but raised millions of dollars and not one single paying customer, and they're drying up and they're going to go out. Yeah. What actually that money does, that's what I don't get. That you get the money and what is next?
Okay. Right. Well, again, the thing is that your customer becomes, right, in the funding model, the product is the company is the product. That's being bought and sold. As long as you can convince enough people that you're doing enough, and enough of those buyers believe in that product.
It's about the company.
The company itself.
Itself.
Not the business.
Not the business.
Right? So the asset of the company, the stock of that company is what's being bought and sold. If you can give enough of a story, and there's a lemming effect, right? Oh, everybody's getting into this. Okay, I'm one of those. Okay, we need 3 of these types of Web3 company, whatever it is. Okay, well, we need to fund that. So VCs work very much like in groups. They work in they act in groups, and once something becomes a trend, right? Then, hey, we need one of those in our portfolio. Then if you happen to be one of those, great. Whether you have a business model or not, they don't care, right? So you have to understand that's a different game. And your focus as an entrepreneur is going to be all about that funding, giving them the report. Oh, we're getting growth. We have lots of users and we're spending all this money. But none of that is really looking at the real problem, right? You're not actually looking at the real customer, the real issue, because you're speaking in such grandiose, big abstract terms. Oh, we're going to get 1% of the healthcare market, and therefore, so you're up at this high level, but really entrepreneurship is at this very detailed level, right? Even the founders of Airbnb, they actually were doing they wanted to do a mattress, right? Air mattress, and they had to figure that out. They actually had people. They figured out all the problems that were happening with getting someone to live in your house and all. They worked that out in a very micro way first to really work out those mechanics before they started scaling it out, right? So that's the problem of today is you've got a whole bunch of capital, way too much capital, too many funds, too much capital, running after way too few ideas, and way too few entrepreneurs that know what they're doing, who are then just running around trying to get this asset moved along down the sales chain, right? Versus the interesting thing, and the thing we learned about bootstrapping is the constraint is the thing that's powering the innovation. Okay, when you look at the story of Dell, you look at the story of Southwest Airlines. You look at the story.
That's interesting. You told me, yeah.
Right. When you see the real story, not the story that's told later on, or that the company tells in the marketing brochure, or the business professor tells you. When you look at the actual story, what you find is that in these companies that emerge from bootstrapping, when they find themselves in a constraint, when their back is up against the wall, The story of bootstrapping comes from a guy named Baron Munchausen, who told these tall tales, okay? He lived in Prussia, and he told the story about how he was going in a swamp with his horse, and the horse started drowning. He's yelling for help. Hey, is anybody out there? Can I get some help? No one's there to help him. So the Baron looks around, looks down, he sees his bootstraps, right? I might have a little bootstrap here, but when you pull your boots on to turn there's the boot pulls, the bootstraps. He goes, reaches down, and lo and behold, he's able to yank himself and his horse by his bootstraps, okay? Now, it's a crazy story. None of us can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. In fact, there's another version where he grabs his hair and pulls himself up by his own hair. But what is the reason that we tell that story is very interesting and illuminating? Baron Munchausen was running around his whole journey. He had these magical bootstraps on the whole time, right? He had those, but it was only the swamp that forced him to see whether those magical bootstraps could pull himself up.
Then when you're back against the wall.
When you're in that constraint. Southwest Airlines.
That's the story. I want you to tell that because it's a very interesting story. I didn't know until you told me today during the lunch. For the listeners and viewers, that's the great story. You should tell.
Yeah, Southwest is such a beautiful story. I mean, these founders wanted to build a local airline in Texas. Then they wanted to do kind of San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. There's a triangle that they wrote on a napkin. Well, when they started the company, there was something called the Wright Amendment that everybody was moving to DFW from Dallas Love Field. So all these airlines had moved over there, and these guys were saying, "No, we're not part of that agreement. We're just going to start our company and work out of Love Field." Well, all those companies put a court case on Southwest. So for 3 years, Southwest Airlines was dead on arrival. The baby wasn't even born because they had to go fight court cases just to have the right to fly. Luckily, one of their founders is Herb Kelleher. And Herb was a lawyer, said, screw it, let's go fight this case. Kept fighting. 3 years later, he walks out with the right to fly, the legal right to fly his airline. Can you imagine how many entrepreneurs, how's that airline going, Rami? How's your business? We're still in court. I mean, talk about God. Enduring, right, this painful process, right, and waiting to get your thing started. Well, now they've got very little money in the bank, but they have the right to fly. So they go to Boeing and they say, hey, we need some planes. And Boeing says, yeah, we're the plane makers. You came to the right place. They go, well, there's a slight problem. We don't have any money to pay for the planes. So Boeing says, well, on any other day, we would have kicked you out the door. It turns out, you see over there, there's 3 planes? Customer just canceled the order after we made the planes. Boeing's business model is not like the car industry. They don't have, cars and lots, right? They make the plane and they sell the plane. So they said, tell you what, we'll do you a deal, once in a lifetime deal. We'll give you these 3 planes, $1 million off the price, $5 million price, and we'll finance the whole cost for you. Wow. All you got to do is pay from your monthly revenue. What were those 3 planes? What model of aircraft were they?
737.
737s. Southwest Airlines, by crazy constraint, got the first part of its business model. Right? What does Southwest Airlines fly today? Nothing but 737s. That wasn't because they thought we're going to buy 730. It was because of a situation
that was available.
That happened. That was available, right? But it turned out to be an incredibly important piece to what we today know as the business model. So back to this business model thing. What's interesting is entrepreneurship is the search for a business model, a new business model that doesn't exist before. The entrepreneurial journey is the search. You don't start with a business model. But that's how this whole entrepreneur porn thing is written. Oh, well, we are the Airbnb of da-da-da. We're the da-da-da of this thing. We're the Google, we're the Uber of whatever. That's again, copycatting. That presumes you know what the business model is. That's only for an investor at a VC to go, oh, good. We got one of those safe bets, right? Versus I'm really in this problem and I'm discovering what is the true need here that people have and how am I going to put this together. So your business model is always going to emerge. You never start with a business model. You end with a business model. The output of the entrepreneurial journey is a business model. So how crazy is it is to tell people, start with a business model. What's your business model? What's your business plan? Well, I mean, I got some ideas for it, but I don't know the whole business model, right?
So how could you do the business plan when you don't know anything,
It's silly. And most of these great companies, never had a business model. And later on they can tell you their business model, but initially they went started with, Intel had a one-page business model when they got their funding from Arthur Rock, went to Arthur Rock, and one-page business model. It wasn't a business model. It was just the company plans to do this. Right? HP tried 3 different things before they finally figured out machines that could sell. They tried bowling pin things, and that didn't work. And so it's not about that. It's about kind of getting something going, seeing if there's something need out there, right? Trying it out in the marketplace, iterating it with this customer feedback, moving around, and then slowly putting the pieces together as you go along. And that actually is the way to do it.
But is this a bootstrapping model or is this the VC model? Which one you're going to go for it? Because what you're telling me right now, this is what is just going through the journey, figuring it out, and shoot, adjust. It's just like that. This is the more bootstrapping rather than giving the money and I want to go figure. It just doesn't.
That's why you had that company that you talked about that just because they already pre-decided what their business model was. They ran hard at it. It turned out they just ran off in the wrong direction really fast.
Customer was the last
thing in their mind, and so they spent their money and they're done. Right, so that's a kind of like we start with the hypothesis of a business model. We think we know what it is. We run really fast and hope that we hit it, right? And maybe we make a couple of course corrections along the way, but mostly, you're not going to be able to get there. There's an interesting thing that, Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn founder, and he's written a book with a friend of mine actually called Blitz Scaling. Hate the title. But it's all about these highly scalable startups, and they did a whole bunch of talks at Stanford. They did a class around it and talks. Ooh. And we can send the link to people. But there's a couple of talks of like 4 or 5 talks in there. Even in that in the funding model, right? Start small. Start the real practitioners. I'm not talking about a bunch of people that think they know what they're doing and are running around with fake models. I'm talking about people that really build this stuff. They start small and they work it out in the small way before they put the gas on. Right. So even in Silicon Valley, that is something that you bootstrap first, essentially. Right. Bootstrap first, work through the details, use the constraints to get things going. And then, sure, if you want to get that funding, then you can. Right. A classic bootstrapper will just keep bootstrapping, and they're 20 years later, Tito, right? He's bootstrapped his business. He's worth some $3-4 billion, whatever it is. And the company's on a journey. I think that's the other difference, right? Is that what they found is that long-lived companies that have long lifespans, it's like human beings, right? The way they're raised is what determines the future. Shell did a study about companies because they reached their 100th birthday. They found that in long-term companies, people treat the company like a being on a journey. Whereas in short-lived companies, they only talk about the bottom line and the financial constructs of the company. So if you if you built a company to sell it, it's already in your mind that it's not a thing. It's just an asset. It's not a being. Whereas Southwest would never consider themselves an asset, right? They put hearts on their plane and love field and LUV is the ticker because the meaning part, right? The journey entrepreneurship, that's sort of this other piece of the puzzle is much more important than the financial part, right? The meaning piece leads the way first.
Those companies, I promise you, they will sacrifice their people for numbers in the heartbeat.
That's right.
Which is the other one. I don't think so. It's all about the people. It's a people driven. There's a people behind it. Is a journey. Is a meaning. That's what I think the entrepreneurship community right now is so fragile and uneducated right now at the moment that. When I go through it, I say, what the heck these guys are thinking?
Yeah, we've fallen into the trap. I mean, I think Austin has fallen into that trap of the allure of that whole funding model and trying to ape and copy, Silicon Valley, which you can never do, which I think you talked with Brian about that, how the Silicon Valley's journey is totally unique. Silicon Valley, the meaning of Silicon Valley comes from the gold rush. Right, the 49ers, 1849, not the football team. The 1849ers who went to Silicon Valley, to California to find gold.
They give you the shovel,
They give you the shovel, right? In fact, the first bootstrapper, right, Levi Jeans, right? That was a smart guy. So Silicon Valley has got that mindset, the get big fast mindset, the gold rush mindset. So then naturally, Hollywood came, and then Silicon Valley came, so the materials have changed, right? Now it's silicon, not gold. But the idea is the meaning of Silicon Valley and California is that, right? The golden arches. McDonald's came from San Bernardino. We're not that. And the whole thing is to replicate someone else's journey is silly, right? I can't be you, you can't be me.
Yeah.
We've got to be on our own journey. So Austin, I think we're in a very unique place, which is about, we're a city, when we talk to people about in Austin through this Austin Equation project, we ask people, what's Austin? If LA is be famous and Silicon Valley is be huge and New York is like be world class or be rich, whatever, what's Austin? And people said, very easy, be yourself. Be and become yourself. We are the city where people are on a journey of self-discovery. And it turns out you can build some great businesses around that.
Absolutely.
Right? This idea of journey entrepreneurship is like, don't just make some big thing that you don't care about. Follow your passions, build something for yourself, and inevitably you will build something that other people will want, right? And put that meaning into it. Then there's real joy. There's a whole journey. There's enjoyment, not just this vacuous buying and selling of crap and big houses and all of that. You know, that's an empty journey versus something that is driven from something you're really connected to. And I think Austin, we need to start both reminding ourselves that that's who we are and sharing that journey with other places, because that's what we're uniquely doing. In Austin, we care about each other as human beings. And community much more than we care about how much money you have, what car you drive, for God's sakes, you know, all of that crap, you know, that is just vacuous. And we've given that goal to people like it's some sort of magical elixir. More money just, you know, creates more problems.
But right now there's a shiny object syndrome going on. Everybody wants to be a freaking entrepreneur. Everyone wants to be entrepreneurship and want to be entrepreneur. I think it's brutal, as you know. It's hard. It's lonely sometimes, and it's painful. You got to deal with a lot of stuff, from the human aspects of it to the business, from the money going up and down. What is really going on right now? What is these people, they have their definition in their mind that I want to be my own boss. Yeah. You've been there.
It's part of the porn. I think it's part of the porn effect. I mean, we're in a pornified world, right? Social media is nothing but porn. You get on Instagram and it's all porn. I don't mean like porn, but it's people putting these fake images. They're pretending they're on some beach and wow, life's great. And like, that's all a lie.
But nobody wants to talk about their flaws and the pains and the suffering. That's what I'm saying. Social media can be a great tool and assets for education, for adding value and helping other people. Who gives a shit you are on the beach and sitting and enjoying the sun?
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. The influencer. I mean, this is right. This is
that's influencer.
The influencer. I am self-referentially defined by I'm successful because I have followers. I have followers, so I'm successful. That's my entire. I have nothing actually in there, but now I have followers. So therefore, I am right. So these tools have amplified vacuousness and stupidity and kind of this whole idea of just journeys that have no core to them, right? And half those people will eventually come out and go, well, I was lying. I was really going through depression when I was telling you. Right? All these people.
I know some.
Yeah, of course.
The guy calls me and he's depressed as fuck.
Yeah, and he's got 1 million followers.
And then, and I said, what's going on? I saw your post. You okay? I said, no, I had to post that. This is what exactly said. This is what my followers, they expect to see.
Yes, exactly.
I said, what?
Right.
You really put that fake shit up there that people see that you are actually happy, that you are not, and you are miserable, that you're not going to say, what is point of doing that?
Right. Well, and that goes in lots of realms. You see that in politics. If you know the history of Fox News, that was the same kind of thing. It's not tell people what they need to know. It's give people what they want to hear. And that's Roger Ailes and Rupert Murdoch, and those two guys got together and said, we're just going to give these people what they want to hear, not the truth. So people are being programmed by, what I call hate capitalists as well. So you have the vacuous capitalists and you have the hate capitalists who are going to make money just by feeding people things that make them angry, make them afraid, and then they sell them stuff right as they're doing that. So we have a real issue. We have a tool called capitalism that is a brilliant tool. It has taken us out of poverty. It's created amazing things and a lifestyle that all of us enjoy on a daily basis. Just as regular people, we have access. We wear indigo, right? This color, indigo, our jeans. That used to be only what royalty used to wear. Only royalty could afford, because indigo was so hard to make. But thanks to capitalism, thanks to science, we can all wear indigo. We can all be kings, right? I live in a 2-bedroom apartment that is automated, completely automated by wonderful little Apple products that I can turn my door off, right? So all of us have access to solve our basic physical needs from just basic capitalism, and it's a wonderful thing. But then it can become its own problem, becomes a cancer, because more means more. More is better. Bigger is better. It's actually not, right? And then you're missing out on actually the meaning part of your journey. The meaning part is about these relationships, community you keep talking about getting to know what your life's journey is about. How do you connect to other people? That's work. It actually takes work to do that. And it's really fun work, especially if you find the right communities to go get involved in that. But if you're only caught up in the consumption game, right, and you're just a consumer and that's your whole identity, then your meaning is going to come from the stuff you bought and the stuff that you're consuming, right? So we have a problem in America, I think today, which is that we're trying to stumble toward this meaning question, but we're using the tools that got us here. We're trying to use those tools that got us here to go forward. It's not going to work, right? Capitalism as a meaning system is not going to give us meaning. It's going to give us stuff.
We are the people behind it that we make shit happens, or we make things worse. Like, I think, do you think there is any way we can have a better community as entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship, even in Austin, or, what should we do? There's any way we can save it? Or this is my dilemma, that how can we do that? How can we go back to the old days and it's just heart-to-heart conversation? Mm-hmm. What do you need, brother? How can I help you? Rather than this old fancy, shiny syndrome object shit.
Yeah, and I think we have to, that's part of what I said about the Bootstrap thing, was when we kind of turned the lights off on Bootstrap, 2014, whatever it was in part because I thought, hey, there's going to be so many things happening in the community for us to support entrepreneurs, that we could just support that larger scene that happened. But what I didn't realize, that Bootstrap did two things. Bootstrap Austin did. It bootstrapped the whole community from not much going on in entrepreneurship in Austin back in the day. But it taught people about this other path of entrepreneurship that's very fulfilling, that leads to a journey, entrepreneurship that is really fun, and there's a process there. It's hard, but you have to go so fast, and you can take your time. But the other thing we all learned was this importance of community. But we had to train each other how to work in community. We had to defend that idea of community. We had to create rules for people to say, don't sell your crap here. Right? This is not a place to sell. This is a place to, as you said, ask for help, share your journey capital, what I call your journey capital, whatever your knowledge is, your skills, yes, your relationships, share that. So I think we have to do some work. I don't exactly know what that looks like, but we have to bring that back, because in some form or format, because I think once people kind of get clued into that, I coined this term, I also, as a joke, I call a slackpreneur. So the opposite of a freaking, techpreneur, like whatever. There's a slackpreneur. And that's a wonderful thing. We have a lot of slackpreneurs that are slowly doing other things, enjoying their journey. They're having fun while they're doing it. They're not just so focused on one thing, and they're slowly putting things together, in their journey. So I think we can be the capital of slackpreneurship,
What with all this experience that you have and phenomenon and stuff and the great book, what advice do you have for the newborn entrepreneurs? Like, they want to get into this thing. They don't understand it. They just know that, hey, entrepreneurship, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be part of a community. I want to create something. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think you got to ask yourself where that idea came from, first of all. Is that your idea, or is that an idea you were fed by media and by social whatever? What's really motivating you? The fact is that most entrepreneurs start their businesses at 40. We talk about these 20-year-olds, but actually, the average age of starting a business
I see that more and more. Yeah.
No, that's just a fact. These are fundamental facts of, if you look at the bulk of entrepreneurs. Why is that? Because it takes a good 15, 20 years to learn something about some area before you can know, hey, no one's solving this problem a certain way, right? You need all this experience to actually build something. But we, of course, love the idea. This is a part of the entrepreneur porn. Oh, the solo entrepreneur, and now he's driving a Lamborghini, and he's 25 years old. So
Mark Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg. Oh God, it's so freaking tiresome. So I think it's hurry up and slow down. Hurry up and slow down. Like, take your time. Do you have a real passion for something, or are you just doing it because everybody's doing it and you want to be rich? You've got to do a lot more introspection, I think, and get to the bottom of what you're doing this for. And then you've got to educate yourself on these kind of different paths. You've got to realize, hey, there's these different kinds of entrepreneurial games that can be played, and each one is going to have a different reality for you and different set of actions. And then you can maybe, get going on that journey.
What is the gift that we said we're going to talk about? My audience, my listeners, my viewers, they're gonna get. What is that? What is the surprise?
Yeah. So what's been cool and is that in part thanks to COVID, what I realized was that people are like take a concept like MRE. They can read a book, but the book is not going to really get them to really internalize. There you go. Here's Steve's book.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be able to really internalize the model if you just read a book. And what I found was very effective was when I would do MRE training inside of organizations or like Leadership Austin. Over a period of time, people can really slowly digest it, then start to figure out their core energy. And that's a process which takes time because you start to realize I'm not what I think I was. And so what has happened, which is really cool, is that I now have a curriculum that is a 3-week journey that you can take either with yourself, self-paced, or with a coach or guide. And you can kind of learn the MRE model. The audiobook is part of that. And you can kind of go through in a slow way, in a methodical way, learn the model, then locate yourself in the MRE model, and then start to apply that and make changes in whatever things you think you need to make changes in based on your understanding of yourself. So what I'd love to offer for folks, and we can send them a code for that, is if they send us a message, we can figure out what that is. We'll give them a free access to the course.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Where they should send the email out? To you?
Yeah, send the email to.
We put it in the context of the.
Let's call it Talk2Rami at aviri.com.
That sounds good. That sounds good, guys. You should take advantage of this, guys, because this book is phenomenal. If you get it with the course and actually audiobooks is part of it, you're gonna get a lot out of it. And the husband and wife can do it too.
Yeah. So in fact, I recommend that people do it with a buddy. So if you get the course, we'll give you, if you want to take it by yourself, fine. But you're going to get a lot of benefits if you have another partner, whether it's a spouse.
Yeah.
I've had friends of mine tell me that their marriages were saved because they read the book, which is awesome. But yeah, if you're a co-founder and you have a founder and a co-founder, do it together, because you'll start to see why you're different, why you came together, what the skill sets are, how you can, create this thing together. So any kind of buddy that you want, maybe it's just a friend too, but you're going to get a lot more out of it because there are homework assignments and then there's a reflective session. The reflective session is done kind of, with a coach or guide or with your buddy. So you'll do like a homework assignment, then you get together for a reflective session, homework, reflective. That's the structure.
And then if somebody has a question for you, how they should reach out to you, through the email or website or?
Yeah, I'm all over the socials. I'm Bijoy on Twitter, Bijoy on Facebook,
and LinkedIn as well.
LinkedIn and all that. Yeah, so all the usual places.
All link. But to summarize our talk, I think when I go back and I'm just going to review what we talk about, it all comes down to meaning. That we talk about it all day today. Who you are, what you want from yourself, what you expect from yourself, and self-awareness, and who you want to be.
Yeah.
I think as you grasp that and you understand that, I think everything else will be okay. This is my understanding.
Yeah, start from there. Exactly. Start from yourself. You're the most important thing going. And we all have a very, very limited amount of time on this planet, and a very limited amount of time when we're truly able to be alive, and well. And so life is short. And if you're trying to live somebody else's life, you're wasting your time. And at the end of that road is a lot of despair and disappointment, as opposed to engaging with yourself in a really honest way, in a loving, caring way, get to know yourself, really get to know yourself. Then I think you'll have a much better go of it, and the journey will be very rewarding.
Bijoy, thank you so much. You gave me so much of your valuable time today.
Thank you.
I love talking to you.
Likewise.
More, and maybe next time some different topics, but I know we're going to make a lot of good things happen together and actually create a community that we really like to see.
I think that's a very good plan for us to do it, and that's maybe one of the gifts of COVID is it obliterated a lot of things so that we can rebuild things back from the ground up. So looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.